A softness is not just soft, it begins to stand for something. We enter now into the realm of the symbolic, the space where sensation becomes sign, where experience is no longer only lived, but represented. This is the bridge between body and meaning, between the rhythm of raw life and the structure of identity. In development, the symbolic layer emerges gradually, built upon the sensorial ground. A warm bottle no longer means only warmth. It comes to symbolize love. A frown is not just muscle contraction. It stands for disapproval, rupture, threat. The child begins to assign meaning, to weave images, stories, and associations that make sense of their world. This layer of experience allows for reflection, imagination, memory, and inner dialogue. And yet, as clinicians, we often enter the room once this symbolic world has become rigid, fragmented, or distorted. The meanings once created for survival, I'm bad, they'll leave, this is my fault, have hardened into inner truths. Symbols no longer reflect life, they obscure it. So what does this mean for our work? Let's begin with 3 foundational principles. Number 1, symbols are bridges, not endpoints. We often think of language and narrative as the only tools of therapy, and they are, but they're also thresholds, not destinations. When a client says, I'm broken, that phrase isn't the endpoint of their truth. It's a symbolic representation of an underlying sensorial or patterned experience, grief, fear, rejection, fragmentation. So rather than interpreting or correcting the symbol, our task is to follow it. What lives underneath this word? What gesture, image, or sensation accompanies it? A client says, I'm always ruining things. Instead of, let's look at the evidence. Try, if that belief had a texture or shape, what would it be? Where do you feel it in the body? When did you first remember feeling that way? These questions soften the symbol, loosen its hold, and reopen access to the field it arose from. Number 2, metaphor holds multiplicity. Literal language can fracture under pressure. Trauma, grief, shame, these states exceed the bounds of logic. That's where metaphor becomes a lifeline. Invite clients to speak in image. If this experience were a weather system, what would it be? If your sadness were a character in a play, who would they be? If you drew your anger without words, what would the lines look like? Metaphor allows paradox and complexity to coexist. It lets someone be both afraid and courageous, both wounded and whole. And perhaps more importantly, it allows the symbolic system to evolve. One of the most powerful things we can do as clinicians is to facilitate symbolic transformation, helping clients find new language, new symbols, new images that better reflect their emerging truth. And number 3, naming as an act of coherence. To name is not merely to label. It is to organize experience into form. In Winnicott's terms, naming is a symbolic act that bridges the gap between inner and outer worlds. For many clients, especially those with early developmental trauma, there are vast pockets of unnameable experience. In practice, we may witness this as a pause where words should be, a flood of words that avoid the core experience, an inability to reflect on internal states. In these moments, the goal is not interpretation, but presence. Naming can be modeled, invited, and gently co-created. I wonder if this feeling is sadness, or maybe something heavier. You don't have to put words to it. Let's stay here together and let it speak in its own time. This fosters safety in the symbolic layer. It tells the nervous system you don't have to explain yourself to be real. Symbolic play is often dismissed as just for kids, but it remains deeply alive in the adult psyche. Though often hidden in dreams, jokes, slips, and fantasies. For children, symbolic play is a direct portal into the emotional world. A toy becomes a parent, a fort becomes safety, a monster becomes fear personified. In therapy with children, allowing symbolic play to unfold without overstructuring it is critical. Let the child lead. Reflect the emotional tone. Ask questions not about the content, but about the feeling. In adult therapy, we can work symbolically through dream work, active imagination, role dialogue, art or movement-based interventions, and guided visualizations. For example, let's meet that part of you that holds this shame. What does it look like? These symbolic enactments help integrate subpersonalities, express emotional truth, and recognize internal structure. Some individuals, especially those with early neglect, psychosis, or autism spectrum profiles, may show disruptions in symbolic functioning, where symbols are absent, hyperliteral, or unlinked from affect. In these cases, our goal is to gently scaffold symbolic capacity, not to impose it, but to invite its emergence. We do this by grounding in sensorial experience, touch, rhythm, sound, modeling symbolic links. That sound reminded you of your dad, like a memory in your body. Using ritual and repetition to provide symbolic containment, and encouraging creative expression without demand for coherence. When symbolic structures become too rigid, I'm the achiever, I'm always the caretaker, I'm worthless, these identities limit the spontaneous flow of self. They represent overlearned narratives that once served coherence, but now stifle it. Therapy at this stage involves unpacking the symbolic scaffolding around these identities. What does being the strong one protect you from feeling? What were the costs of this symbolic role? Can we create space for other symbols to emerge? Softness, joy, grief. The goal is not to eliminate structure, but to return fluidity to form. To support the ongoing process of symbolic renewal as coherence deepens. The symbolic dimension is the place of language, image, memory, metaphor, and identity. It is not simply a mental realm, but a deeply relational and developmental terrain, where the self begins to weave coherence out of experience. But symbols can both illuminate and obscure. They can bind trauma or transform it. They can trap a person in an old narrative or become the doorway into something new. As clinicians, we are not merely interpreters of meaning. We are witnesses to the symbolic unfolding of a person's truth, guiding them not back to the past, but forward to a more coherent story of the self. If this perspective resonates with you and you would like to see more similar content, please like and subscribe. In the comments, please feel free to share your thoughts and perspectives. In the next video, we'll explore the pattern self, as the next layer of human becoming. Thank you for listening.